What's up, peers, and welcome to the World Crypto Network. Here back for the series on the Breaking Bitcoin conference. Because this conference is so good that we start making videos several months before it actually starts. This is a great event here in Amsterdam, 8th till 9th June of 2019, with a bunch of really, really good speakers that have a lot of valuable insights in Bitcoin and how to break it and how to make it better. Today, we have the second take of our conversation with Chris Belcher, because the first one had some minor internet troubles. But today, we will continue this conversation and see where it takes us. So, Chris Belcher, thank you very much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. Thanks.
Very nice. So we already spoke a bit previously, but just to recap, how or why are you in Bitcoin and why are you working in this?
Well, I suppose I just find it interesting technology and important in a sense for the world. So probably my first kind of experience of all this payment stuff was, maybe it's a bit of a silly story, but I was playing video games like a few decades ago, and you had a thing you could trade like online, whatever, virtual items for PayPal and stuff. And the PayPal caused loads of problems there because obviously there'd be chargebacks and it was bad for privacy. So if you were trading some virtual swords, then the other guy would find out your real name and probably go and harass you because you killed him last week. So for those kind of little things was the reason, probably my first introduction to thinking about the ideas of Bitcoin and privacy and commerce on the internet.
Very nice. And the commerce part is really, really interesting because it's difficult to do that on the internet, right? To have mutual beneficial exchange in cyberspace is not too trivial to achieve. And of course, the cypherpunks have tried several times before Bitcoin and failed all the time. So why do you think does Bitcoin succeed?
Well, I suppose I'm mostly rehashing the white paper here, but because it doesn't have a central point of failure, all the other systems on the internet, there was a DigiCash and even PayPal and stuff. They have a central point. They have a server that can be turned off. And if there's some kind of mistake, if something happens, then the server will be contacted, and they can't really avoid becoming a moderator. They can't really avoid if something morally bad happens, they basically have to reverse the payment. So that means they have to be really careful of the people they let on their platform. They have to get their real name, and they have to make sure they're good for the money they're sending and that kind of thing. So if you have a decentralized system, then all those problems go away. It just becomes like software on your computer that you can transact. And if something bad happens, if you accidentally lose your money, if your computer crashes, well, that's tragic. But the rest of the whole ecosystem isn't affected by that. And that also means that you don't need to, you don't have all the other issues associated with central points of failure. So yeah, in summary, the reason Bitcoin succeeded is because of the low amount of trust that you need, and that happens through decentralization and open source software.
Okay, very, very nice points. And I like how you interweave here the privacy aspect of this entire venture. And so would Bitcoin work in a completely transparent and non-private manner?
I suppose it would work, but then you might be a bit pointless. Like you could just have... So in transparent, you mean that if people's names were on every transaction, I guess it could work, but it would just be a bit less useful, much less useful, in fact. Like going back to my childhood playing video games, if you sell the virtual swords to some guy and then you kill him a week later, then he finds your real name and finds you on social media and harasses your family, then might make you not want to trade on the internet. So yeah, maybe it could work, but it would be much less useful.
Yeah, agreed, right? And one major part of censorship resistance is to be private, right? To not have attribution to these actions, I guess the question would be: would it be possible to have a censorship-resistant money that is not private?
No, probably not. Actually, yeah, because one way to censor something is to punish it after the fact. That, I don't know. For example, suppose you want to donate to some political group that might not be very popular. I was just seeing on Twitter that Hamas accepts Bitcoin donations, and one way to censor that is to just if they're transacting with a system that isn't where your real name is attached, then you can just punish people after the fact. So yeah, censorship resistance is important there.
Yeah, right. And the panopticon, right? If you're afraid of someone watching you, then you're not really free, not in your mind and not in your action.
Yeah,
And
that's right. You do the censor's job without you do it. You censor yourself. You do their job without them making any effort.
yeah, exactly, right. So, Chris, you've worked on some phenomenal projects in Bitcoin, and you've contributed quite a lot. And one thing that you said earlier, right, is that it is a decentralized system, which just means, right, that everyone or every peer on the network has is running a full node, right? And a Bitcoin Core full node is, of course, very useful. But many say that the wallet or the GUI wallet of Bitcoin QT is not, well, that nice. And there are other wallet solutions, like, for example, the Electrum wallet, that is really powerful, and especially for power users, a very nice tool to have. And so your project here that you started about a year ago, Electrum Personal Server, what exactly does that do?
So the way the Electrum wallet works is that it's very fast and very responsive, and when you turn it on, then it synchronizes immediately. You can send and receive straight away. And the reason it does that is it introduces some centralization. So it connects to a bunch of Electrum servers, they're called. They're just servers out there on the internet run by volunteers. And your wallet will ask these servers for what your addresses are, and the server will send you back all your transactions that have been sent and received. And that means it's very fast, but it also means there's centralization introduced. So, for example, these servers will know your real IP address, and they'll link that to your Bitcoin addresses and all your transactions. And an IP address, I mean, even if you use Tor, they'll link the transactions together, and they'll see your entire wallet rather than individual addresses. So, like, what I'm trying to say is the servers will damage your privacy when you connect to them. That's just necessary. That's how it works. That's how the lookup can be so fast. And another issue is that servers in collaboration with miners could actually lie to you. So if you're interested in Bitcoin as like a digital gold thing, or you want it to preserve its decentralization, then you might be concerned if so a concrete example is the server could send you a transaction that you've been received, and that turns out to be fake. It turns out to not be real Bitcoin. So you might, if you've received this transaction, you might have given someone some real good or service, and it turns out you got paid in fake gold, in fake Bitcoin. So it's those two things together, the privacy aspect and the security aspect, is why not just Electrum, but any lightweight wallet is degraded a little bit. So the centralization introduced can lie to you, and it can spy on you. Now, Electrum Personal Server is my attempt to fix this problem a little bit. So it's just the way that when you if you run your full node, it's possible for you to connect your Electrum wallet to your full node. It's really as simple as that. So then you have all the benefits of privacy from using a full node, and all the benefits of security from using a full node, because it restores this decentralization, in a sense. And that's for people who really want to use Electrum, if they like the wallet, if they like the features, but also want to have full node security and privacy. That's really what it's for.
Yeah, awesome. So it's a combination of both full verification with your own full node and decent privacy that we can get here by using this tool. Very nice. But one more question here on the privacy break of the regular Electrum wallet. So does it send the extended public key in a, so to say, clear text over to the server, or does it use some obfuscations like Bloom filters?
So what it does is it doesn't send the XPub key, but it sends the individual addresses. So it will send about 20 of them, or more, depending on how many addresses you've used, but it will send all of them to the server. And the connection between the client and the server is encrypted using SSL. So an eavesdropper couldn't see what they are, but the server itself could.
Okay.
That's the privacy model there.
Yeah, okay. And so, but there is also the other concept of having Bloom filters. Where is the difference here?
Well, Bloom filters are an attempt to use. So that's called BIP37, and they're an attempt to have a lightweight wallet which has some fairly good privacy, but it turned out to not work at all. So if you there's three main breaks of it. I mean, I won't bore you too much with the details, but essentially the idea doesn't work. So Bloom filters are an attempt to have privacy, and they turn out not to work. And if you want more, this sometimes happens in privacy research, but if you want more details, there's a Bitcoin wiki page called BIP37 Privacy Problems, and there it explains in a lot of detail why they don't work. But it's basically a failed a failed technology. People tried it, it didn't work, and that's that.
Okay, and then what are your thoughts on BIP 158, the block filters with Golem Rice filters, and how they might solve this problem?
Yeah, so that's quite a nice idea. That's the reason BIP 37 Bloom filters. One of the reasons they failed is that they'd essentially encode your addresses in an object and then send that to some other server, and the server could analyze it and do whatever they liked with it, do statistical analysis and that kind of thing. So these client-side Bloom filters, the way they work is the server doesn't, any peer server, whatever it might be, doesn't see any of your addresses, even indirectly, but it only sees blocks that you download. So what happens is your wallet has filters, and the filters tell it information about which addresses are contained within blocks. And then it will overlap its own wallet addresses with these filters, and that will tell it which blocks it needs to download. So anyone watching the connection will only know which blocks you're interested in. Now, each block maybe contains about 3,000 addresses, maybe slightly more. So you have a fairly large anonymity set there. It's less good than a full node, because a full node downloads all the blocks from the beginning of time, and this only downloads some of them. But it's definitely an improvement in privacy. So yeah, it's much better than BIP 37 Bloom filters.
Okay, so the Golem Rice filters here are good for privacy, but of course they still suffer from the same inherent issue of SPVs, right? Of trusting a server and the miner to provide the valid block. Yeah.
Also, I should point out the thing isn't whether these are Bloom filters or the Rice Golem filters. So they're just the technical way of how the filtering works. The fact is, the important part is here the filtering happens on the server side for BIP 37, and in BIP 151 it happens on the client side. And it's more private because the filtering happens on the client side, and it doesn't matter whether it's Bloom filters or another kind of filtering.
Okay.
So the name I've been using for them, which I think captures the essence, is client-side block filtering. Mm-hmm. I think that's the clearest. I don't know.
Yeah, very very nice. Okay, so just one technical thing, Chris, that your microphone might be rubbing up against your T-shirt or something. So some minor interference, just so you know, maybe hold it a bit.
Okay, I'll hold it. Okay, tell me. Hopefully, it's a bit better now.
Yeah, much better. So okay. One other great project that you work here, or that you have worked on, is JoinMarket, and so of course that is a utilization of CoinJoins. And maybe to start this conversation now, what are the inherent issues of a blockchain that which utilizes a chain of digital signatures, and where might be some privacy breaks that justify the use of CoinJoins?
So the problems of blockchains is that. To get this security aspect of Bitcoin, that you have to know that a coin has been spent twice, or it hasn't been printed. You haven't printed infinite coins or something. And the way that happens is that every transaction is sent to every peer, and every peer can verify every transaction and make sure that the rules are followed. So a coin has been spent twice, or the other rules, and that has a downside in that every peer can see every transaction. So they'll see coins moving from one address to another address and that kind of thing, and they'll see their timestamp and their amount, and so that leaks a lot of privacy, because you can see, so people's real names aren't attached to the transactions, but if you learn that this particular Bitcoin address belongs to someone and you see transactions coming to and from that, then you'll get a good idea of their economic activity. So CoinJoin is one of the ideas to fix this, or to work on this, to improve this. And it works, the fundamental principle is that many people come together to agree to create one CoinJoin transaction, or rather, sorry, one Bitcoin transaction between them. So CoinJoin is called that because it joins all their transactions into one. And then for an observer, like someone just looking at the transactions they've downloaded, they won't be able to disentangle the actual transactions in this one big transaction, and that's called the CoinJoin.
Okay, so this then breaks the so-called common ownership heuristic, right? That in a transactions, all the inputs provided belong to the same person, or the same entity, so to say. And with CoinJoins, we can then use a bunch of outputs from different peers, and we fund different inputs. But of course, because Bitcoin also has a clear value that is being shown on the blockchain of how many Bitcoin are being transacted, How can we solve against that issue of having a zero set or zero sum analysis of who pays who?
So I think you're okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. So for CoinJoin to improve privacy, the multiple people that make one transaction have to have the same output amount. Okay. So for example, if there were 3 people and one of them paid 1 BTC and then from the transaction got 1 BTC, another one paid 2 BTC and then got 2 BTC, another one paid 3 BTC and so got 3 BTC, then it would be easy to unmix because the one who had an input of 2 would just get the output of 2, and that would be easy to unmix. So CoinJoins which improve privacy, they have to have an output amount which is the same. So in the earlier example, they'd have to 3 people coming together and they all have to pay 1 Bitcoin together. So there should be 3 outputs in the transaction which are worth 1 Bitcoin. And then because the amounts are the same, they happen in the same transaction, they would not be unmixable by any observer on the blockchain. And yeah, that's one way that CoinJoins improve privacy. It might be easier with the diagram, I don't know, but there's in the privacy wiki, there's like a diagram of this and it explains it.
Oh, yeah.
That one.
Yeah. Okay, so but then specifically maybe to JoinMarket, what type of CoinJoin are you doing here, and how many people are involved?
So the way JoinMarket works is that because many people need to come together to create one CoinJoin or one transaction, there's an economic problem there, in that you have to get the right resources, i.e. coins. They have to be in the right place at the right time in the right quantity, and that's quite hard to coordinate because people have different needs and time preference and that kind of thing. So the way JoinMarket works is it uses market forces to solve this problem, in that one person who wants to make a CoinJoin, they'll go to like their software, their wallet will go to JoinMarket, and they'll find 5 other people, usually it's about 7 or 8, and they'll create a CoinJoin with them immediately for any amount that they want. The reason they can do this is because they pay a small CoinJoin fee, which is set by the market. And that incentivizes the other 6 people. They're incentivized to leave their computer on all the time to collect these CoinJoin fees because they make money, and it also improves their privacy. So CoinJoin, in the CoinJoin terminology, in JoinMarket terminology, they are called market makers. They're the ones who make money, who earn the CoinJoin fees, and market takers, and they're the one who pay the fees. But in return for paying the fees, they can create a CoinJoin whenever they like. That's the essential idea of how JoinMarket works, that it's a market for CoinJoins.
Very, very nice how you combine here both great technology and also the market economics and market incentives, right? But because there are 2 different types of peers, the market makers and the market takers, is there a difference of the privacy that they get out of such a transaction?
Yeah, so the market takers, they have slightly more privacy in that the CoinJoin happens on their computer, so they can see all the linkages of which input ends up in which output. They can see all that. And market takers don't see that. They only see that their own input ends up in their own output. So market takers have slightly more privacy from, like, if their threat model is the market makers, then they have more privacy. But if their threat model is anyone who's just looking at the blockchain, then they have the same amount of privacy.
Ah, okay, very nice. So there is then, let's say, some minor trust here between the market takers and market makers in the sense of privacy, right? So they might de-anonymize each other.
Yeah, so they in a sense, they have the knowledge. The taker has this knowledge, and they, I suppose the assumption, maybe a small assumption behind JoinMarket is that the person who's paying for the CoinJoin, who's made the effort to do this, they're presumably interested in their own privacy, so they're not going to ruin their own privacy and everyone else's just by publishing this information.
Okay, and might there be an issue if a huge adversary would make a bunch of offers? Could that break, or somewhat like if a Sybil attack, so to say, would that break the privacy of the market takers?
Yeah, that's right. That is that's a thing that has to be considered. So you can actually work it out. It's a little bit similar to the way mining works in Bitcoin, is that if you have a certain amount of money, then you can break the system. And you can work out how much that is for JoinMarket. So essentially you need to own lots of Bitcoins and then put them all in these bots and sort of flood the market. And in mining, in Bitcoin mining, the way it works is if you have 50%, then you can do anything. And here you need not 50%, you need essentially all the coinjoins to be done by you, because if you're trying to spy on a taker and he finds just one maker which isn't you, then he'll have privacy, because at least he'll have privacy with the two, with that maker and with your Sybil attack, in a sense. So yes, it is, but like Sybil attacks are possible, but they cost money.
Yeah, okay, very nice. And again, that's an economic disincentive to not do it, right? And the attacker has to put up a bunch of money, and that is then, of course, a costly attack. So again, economic forces here as a tool to defend the privacy of users. Very nice.
Yeah, that's right. So you could imagine, I mean, you could think of this stuff that if maybe America and China both wanted to de-anonymize JoinMarket, they could both put loads of, try and Sybil attack it at the same time. But if you, as a market taker, come along and take some orders from America and some from China, they together won't know what's happening unless they cooperate.
Okay, yeah, very, very cool. But then there are also, so is there always one market maker and one market taker for each round, or can there be several market takers together at the same time?
So one market taker chooses many other makers. So one coinjoin in JoinMarket is made of one market taker and many makers, normally about 7 or 8, like by default.
Oh, okay, very nice. Yeah, because right, the market taker wants to have he dictates which denomination and how many coinjoin rounds. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, very cool. And I think another cool way to work around the Sybil attack problem is that the market taker can set how many rounds and with what time staggering between. So how does that work to obfuscate a bit?
Yeah, so that's one script in JoinMarket called the Tumbler script, which is it comes from an understanding that one coinjoin will only give you an anonymity set in JoinMarket of 7 or 8, as I said. But if you stagger them together and have different amounts, then you'll gain much more anonymity. So the aim of this Tumbler script is to do exactly what you said, which is a user would put some Bitcoins in there and they'd write in their destination addresses where they want the Bitcoins to go. And the Tumbler script would automatically be a taker and create loads of coinjoins and have random weight between them of like a few hours by default or something like that. And at the end would send the coins to some destination. So hopefully, not, it could be wrong. Yeah, there's been research on this, but hopefully that would completely break the link between the two, the input address and the output address.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting. Okay, very nice. So are there risks of losing your money with JoinMarket as both a market taker and market maker?
So with being a market maker, or in fact anyone, a thing with CoinJoin is there's no risk of someone else stealing from you within the CoinJoin. So either the entire CoinJoin happens, either all the combined transactions happen, or none of them do. So there's no risk in that sense of losing your money. However, there is a risk that to do a CoinJoin, your wallet needs to be online. Your private keys need to be on a computer that's connected to the internet. So there is a risk there in that any computer that's online could, in theory, be hacked or have malware, and then they could steal your coins. So yeah, that is a risk. But in terms of the atomicity, so this concept of either the whole thing happening or none of it happening, that holds there. So there's no risk of, for example, someone taking your money and then promising to give it back, but then never doing it. That kind of thing never happens. Okay. So I'd say the risk is normally what people do to run market makers is they only run JoinMarket and Bitcoin Core on like a Raspberry Pi, which a computer which does nothing else. And over the years, that's shown to be quite secure. That I'm not aware of anyone who's lost their money doing that. They also don't need to have an open port or anything like that. So it can be made quite secure.
Cool. Very, very nice. And so what is the average price for such a JoinMarket coinjoin?
So it depends on the amount that you're doing. So takers can they can have like an absolute fee, which is a fee they're paid regardless of what the amount is. And they can also have a relative fee. So, for example, 0.1% of the CoinJoin amount. And but just like a ballpark figure, you normally pay about 100 Satoshi or maybe 500 Satoshi for per peer. So if you're doing like 7 or 8 CoinJoins, then that's, what would that be, like 5,000 Satoshi or something like that. Is those kind of prices, like not very much at all. But they normally make us, at least in the past, they had lots of CoinJoins and then it would add up over time and they'd make a fair amount of, like a good amount of money considering it's very low risk.
Oh, cool. Very nice. So it's a way for you, the dear viewers, to stack some sats while increasing your privacy. So that is very nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Chris, you also wrote the extremely long, but extremely thorough and very well-researched privacy wiki on bitcoin.it/wiki. And as you can see here in the contents, it's really long and it's really thorough. So why did you write this? Why do you think it's important to have such a place that discusses all of these aspects?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Because you're breaking up. I heard, why did I write this?
Yeah, exactly. That's the question.
Okay, so there's a big thing of privacy in that in Bitcoin is you have a lot of people talking it down. You have people saying, "Oh, Bitcoin is completely public, and there's no point even trying to protect your privacy." And I thought that was wrong. That actually you can be very private in Bitcoin if you just have some knowledge. So I want to get the knowledge out there so that people who are interested in this stuff know what they need to do if they want to stay private. And I got the idea just from working on privacy over the years and reading about this stuff, and thought it would be a good thing to have a document like this, which has hopefully everything about privacy I could think of in one place.
Yeah, and I think you really managed a great task here. This is a phenomenal read and a very, very awesome resource page that then I now can link people to accumulate some new knowledge about, privacy, right? And we already talked a bit about here some of these blockchain attacks on privacy, like the common input or the change address detection or the transaction graph and the amount. But you also have here, for example, the unusual scripts. What is that about?
So that's about every Bitcoin address is actually, many of them just represent one public key. So if you produce a signature corresponding to this public key, you can spend the money. But there are more unusual scripts, and the most well-known is multi-signature, which means instead of having one key that needs to spend the money, it's some combination of many keys. Like 2 of 3 is a common one, which means there's 3 public keys, and any 2 of them need to sign to actually move the money. And the reason that has privacy implications is that these scripts are visible on the blockchain. Everyone can see them. So it means if you, so for example, there's been, I've read a thing of, you can see on the blockchain, someone had a 5 of 11 multisig, which only happened once, like one time in 2017. And you can really see that someone sent money into this 5 of 11 multisig, did some transaction, then sent it all out again. And that was that. And 5 of 11 multisig never appeared on the blockchain at all ever again after that. So in that situation where they were using a really, really unusual kind of multisig, that essentially completely destroyed their privacy. Like, okay, not completely destroyed because you don't know their real name, but you can see when they were doing transactions, by what amount, and all that kind of stuff. So that's what that particular privacy break is about.
Very nice. Okay, yeah, and so don't use 2 fancy scripts that you don't really need, right?
Yeah. So the most common is 2 of 3 multisig.
Yeah.
And if you use that, then that's loads of exchanges use it, and it's good enough. I mean, probably depends on your threat model, but there's an idea to improve all that, which is Schnorr signatures, and one effect of those is that any multisig, any M of n, can be made to look like a single sig signature when it's on the blockchain. So it greatly improves privacy in that respect.
Schnorr signature is the special type of magic because not just can it be an aggregated key and signature, it might also be a scriptless script, right? That can do some coin swaps or like hash time locked contracts for Lightning and stuff like this. So Schnorr is very nice.
Yeah.
Then you also have here the forced address reuse. And I think address reuse is one of these really tragic things that many people do, and that is just horrific for privacy. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this address reuse means using the same address again for multiple transactions, and that means that all those transactions there's basically certain evidence that they're owned by the same person. So it's like if someone asked me the top 3 things they should do to improve privacy, the probably number 1 or number 2 would be to avoid address reuse. So only use an address, use it once to receive money and then spend from it, and then never use it again. So this forced address reuse you asked about it's also been called a dusting attack, which is where there's some adversary and they see addresses being used on the blockchain and they just send a small amount of money to them. So they've effectively forced the address to be reused. And some people, like some wallets, automatically will spend this, and they'll link it with they'll leak information that way. So when they spend this small amount of dust, they'll link it with other addresses. That's what that section is about. And I thought it's a more descriptive name than dust attack, because in fact, it doesn't have to be dust. So you could do forced address reuse and then send someone $100 like worth of Bitcoin. It's quite a lot. And if they spent it, they would damage some of their privacy. So you can think of it in that way, that is your privacy worth $100? Maybe. And then if not, what if they send you $1,000? And then the number just goes up until they bribe you to ruin your privacy, whoever these adversaries are.
Well, I mean, free Bitcoin is the one thing, right? That's actually quite nice.
Yeah,
and
that would be
maybe
great,
if it's
right?
a large amount, you can spend it inside a CoinJoin.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. You'd use, if you're aware of it. I think the main problem was that people's wallets did this automatically. Like historically, before, even today, there's a lot of wallets that will spend that kind of thing automatically without showing to the user, so the user's not aware of the privacy they've lost.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's maybe talk here a bit about, in the wiki, methods to improve Bitcoin privacy, right? And we talked a lot about CoinJoins already, but you bring up here a very interesting point, and that is to obtain Bitcoins anonymously, right? And it's often the case that centralized custodial exchanges, because they touch the fiat realm, because they are Bitcoin banks, they are legally required and forced to do KYC and to de-anonymize you. How can we protect against that, and why is it such a huge problem?
Yeah, so that's like an important point there, that we often in these kind of discussions talk about technology, that we're going to have additional signatures or we'll change our behavior and avoid address reuse. But in fact, if all the incoming transactions and all the outgoing transactions from Bitcoin have an identity attached, then no amount of technology will actually solve your problem. Because if you see every transaction going in and see, okay, this was, Belcher sending this much and then whatever, Max sending that much, then it doesn't matter what the technology is, they'll see all your transactions anyway. If you want to be anonymous, like for an example, if you wanted to pay for an anonymous VPN, the easiest way to do that is just get some Bitcoins that aren't connected to your identity. Then you can pay for your VPN, and but you don't need to use CoinJoin. You just pay for it, and it's not connected to your identity, so you'd be anonymous. And the way to do that is generally you use cash, so you trade for cash like in person, or you do cash by mail. And then another way I've seen is to buy a gift card. You can normally buy them in shops, at least in Western countries, and then online you can trade that for Bitcoin. So normally Amazon gift cards or Steam gift cards, they work quite well.
Yeah, exactly, right. And one also really cool thing is 5.1.3, right? Employment, to earn your Bitcoin, right? By providing a valid service to your customers. And I think that's also a really interesting way of accumulating private Bitcoin. We also see here the traffic analysis, right? That the internet traffic that is actually sent. So how is that a problem, and how can Tor, for example, solve this?
Right. So Bitcoin is software, and it connects to other software of the internet, and through those connections it leaks some information. And one of the biggest things the biggest examples of that is when you send your own transaction, you broadcast it to the network. So it starts from your node, gets sent to other nodes, those nodes send it to nodes that they're connected with, and so on, it connects to everyone. But one thing that can happen there is, for example, your internet service provider, they can see all your connections. And in that example, they'd see that you've sent a transaction out that previously wasn't sent into you. And then it's easy to see that the transaction actually belongs to you because you sent it. Or another example is transaction surveillance companies. They will they'll connect to as many nodes as they can as possible, and they'll get timing attacks. So they'll see an unconfirmed transaction originated from this place, and then they could see it spreads out over here to the rest of the network, which means the first place was probably the origin. So that's what I mean by traffic analysis in that sense. And the way the Tor can help fix that is that what you could do is connect your full node on the normal internet, and it downloads blocks and verifies them. And then when you want to send a transaction, you just send it through Tor instead of through the ClearNet. And Tor is a way of using the internet anonymously. Hopefully, like, it has attacks, but still it works fairly well. And you could do that by doing this. Then you break you break those attacks that I just said. So that if there's an internet service provider, they'd only see you using Tor. They wouldn't see that your transaction's gone. And if there's a transaction surveillance company who's connected to lots of nodes, they'll just see that your transaction appeared in some random node, and the source IP address was a Tor IP address. So they won't get any information that way.
Exactly,
So
or we just blast the signed transaction over the Blockstream satellite, which probably would also be a nice way.
Yeah. So the point about satellite is that's if you want to hide the idea that you're using Bitcoin at all. So if maybe you're in some country, I was seeing maybe India is maybe going to ban Bitcoin, and that would be one way they could punish people who are using Bitcoin, even though it's banned, is they could just look at their internet. So if they see that you're downloading blocks, that means you're using Bitcoin, and they go to your house and arrest you. And then to get around that, one way to do that is to use the satellite, the Blockstream satellite, because that's receive only. So you just have a satellite dish somewhere in your house, and it receives the blocks. It never sends anything, and no one else even knows you're receiving, or so anything like that. So that has a good privacy aspect there. Another way to do that, if you for some reason can't access the satellite, is to run Bitcoin entirely over Tor, which is possible. And then if there's someone spying on your connection, they only see you using Tor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very nice. So you also bring up here the point of blinded bearer certificates, right? And that would be, for example, Chaumian eCash. That was one of the very early implementations of digital currencies, but it failed, right? And so how might we use digital bearer certificates in order to protect privacy, but still retain some security?
Yes, and that's an interesting point. That one of the first digital cash attempts was from the 1990s, and it was called DigiCash. And it was based on this idea of blinded bearer certificates. And that worked. That had a fun bit of cryptography called blind signatures, it was essentially a digital signature, but the signer wouldn't know what the message is. So it's a bit like they could write their hand signature on an envelope, but they wouldn't know what's inside the envelope. And later, what could happen is someone could take this signature and prove that it applied to this message. So in the analogy, they'd be opening the envelope, and somehow the signature has gone through the paper and is on the letter underneath. So that actually had excellent privacy. That had perfect information theoretical privacy, in that there'd be a server and it would give out these eCash tokens, and it would never know where one token ended up or where it's gone and that kind of thing. So it was great for privacy. In fact, as I said, 100% information theoretic privacy. But it failed because it was centralized. Because this one server, DigiCash was a company, and the company just went bankrupt, ran out of money, and then the server closed down, and all your money was gone. And that was that. So there is a thing that I think makes the point that decentralization there is in many ways more important than privacy, because you can have decentralization and damage some privacy, but if you give up decentralization to get more privacy, you could end up with the system being destroyed. So that's actually one point with a lot of these privacy altcoins, so Zcash and Monero and that kind of thing, is that they trade away decentralization in return for some privacy. So especially Zcash and Monero, in that their full nodes, they have much worse scaling. They, like the full nodes in the asymptotic limit, need to use more information, download more, use more bandwidth, and use more CPU and that kind of thing. So they've lost some decentralization, and in return they get privacy. But you could take that even further. You could say, why do you use DigiCash? That has perfect privacy, better than even Zcash, but its decentralization is not there, 0.
Yeah, right. But do you think that we can build a blinded bearer certificate mint on top of Bitcoin, right? Where the underlying currency is Bitcoin, and in kind of a second layer or reserve system, we use or we protect against the inflation by having Bitcoin as the main anchor, but still then get the privacy from these blind signatures.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why it's there in this privacy wiki. And that with this server, you could, instead of having your whole currency based on this one central point of failure, you could have a server which only deals in Bitcoin, and people only deposit a small amount that they want to do, that they want to transact with. So that could be useful in, for example, for tipping people, in that people could deposit, I don't know, 0.01 Bitcoin onto this thing, and it could actually be in a multi-signature address. So the central point of failure is spread out among more people. And then you could transact perfectly privately, giving people tips or whatever, paying for small amounts. And when you finished, you can withdraw the Bitcoin from that and you get it on the blockchain, and it'll be perfectly secure but less private. So that's the idea people have been thinking about. They've been calling them eCash servers or blinded bearer certificates, and they are, yeah, they'd be another kind of second layer technology.
Yeah,
so yeah, they'd be a good idea.
Yeah, very nice. They are. And there's a service hooked in that I just recently noticed that is building this exactly on Bitcoin. So let's see if they can make it work.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah, it really is. And of course, one second layer technology that all the fuss and all the craze is all about today is the Lightning Network. So could you please go a bit into the basics, why Lightning Network might be good for privacy?
So Lightning Network works. It was originally invented as a way to improve the scalability of Bitcoin. So in Lightning Network, transactions don't need to be flooded to every pair like they do in the blockchain. Instead, they are routed over intermediaries. So Lightning creates channels between Bitcoin pairs, and the channels, they're actually a multi-signature address. And then Bitcoin can be moved across from the channel without touching the blockchain. And it's also possible to have multi-hop payments, which go over different intermediaries. And then there's a principle in computer sciences that if you have a connected graph, you can generally reach any node. If it, like under certain conditions, you can reach any node in a small amount of hops. It's similar to the idea of 6 degrees of separation, that if you know people and they know people, then in 6 hops of that, in 6 sort of friendship hops, you could reach anyone on Earth. That's the principle of Lightning Network, that you can make these payments off-chain. And the reason they're interesting is they don't have a central point of failure. So there's no one that the people can't, these payment channels work on a concept of smart contracts, and that no one can steal from you. It's a little bit like the coinjoin idea from earlier, that no one can steal from you in this channel, and the payment either will go all through at once or it won't happen at all. And so that improves scalability, and it also improves privacy of Bitcoin, because these transactions are no longer flooded to everyone. They just happen. They're only known to maybe 5 people, like these intermediaries and the final destination. So they improve privacy a lot that way.
Right, and it does so by removing information from the blockchain, right? CoinJoins add information to the blockchain to obfuscate and to increase the anonymity set. Lightning Network just removes transactions altogether. And as you say, it only broadcasts them to the, or not broadcasting, but directly sends them only to the peers interested. So that's a very nice, different approach to privacy, right?
Yeah, and that's the approach that will probably work best long term, in that Bitcoin does have like a scalability thing, that the way it deals with its resource issues is that fees go up. So miner fees go up, and it wouldn't be good to get into a situation where being private means you have to pay more in miner fees, because then that would be a disincentive to be private. So another approach is to improve privacy and scalability at the same time, and you do that by removing information from the blockchain, not adding more. That would be how Lightning works. So then what would happen is your transaction would be more private and they'd be cheaper. So hopefully everyone would use them.
Yeah, very nice. That's a good
another reason it sounds exciting.
Yeah, yeah. And you also talk here a bit about onion routing. And of course, we know onion routing from the Tor network. And here anyone can route information to anyone else, right? But with the Lightning Network, we have onion routing over specific channels. And these channels are rather static, right? And it takes at least 1 or 2 on-chain transactions to open or to close and open one. So can we assume the same onion or privacy level from onion routing of the Tor browser, for example, to now the Lightning Network? Or where are the different trade-offs here?
Yeah, so onion routing is an idea in cryptography where when you send a message, it has many different layers of encryption, and the intermediaries, the message goes over intermediaries, and each intermediary can only decrypt their own public key, their own private key, and then they send it on to the next person who can decrypt it. So that provides a lot of privacy, and it's used in Tor, and it's also used in Lightning Network. But the thing here, that the point I'm making on that privacy page is that the Lightning Network, you can overlay the routing information with the topology. So with the list of all the payment channels, and so that has less good privacy properties than Tor, because in Tor a message could go to any other peer in the entire network. So I don't know, if Tor has 10,000 nodes, then your message can go to any one of those 10,000. But in Lightning, because the intermediary node might be connected to maybe 6 other peers, then they'll only have 6 options where it can go to. So privacy is less good than Tor, but it's still better than not having onion routing at all.
Yeah, okay, very nice. You also speak here about a common hash lock value. What exactly do you mean about that?
Yeah, so the way Lightning works is it has this idea called a hash time locked contract, which is it's essentially saying a thing that Bitcoins can go into this contract, and the other party can get the Bitcoins out if they wait a certain time, maybe like in Lightning it's 1 day or so, or if they provide a hash lock. So if they provide a value which hashes to this value that's in the contract. So in other words, if they provide a secret, and that's the thing that makes Lightning routing atomic. Like, it means that you can't be stolen from when you're using this. That either the whole route happens or none of the route happens. So the common hash lock value there is a thing with privacy where for a particular payment route, this hashed value will be the same for the whole thing. So if there's 6 hops, then each of those 6 will have the same hash value. And that means if there's an adversary who, maybe if they control 1 or 2 of these intermediaries, they could tell that they're part of the same payment, because they'll see a hash lock value here is the same as a hash lock value somewhere else. And a solution to that is scriptless scripts. So that's another reason that Schnorr is good, because with scriptless scripts, you have the way they work with adapter signatures is that the adapter signature can be different for each hop, and they will still give the same signature at the end. So then there wouldn't be this problem of common hash lock value.
Oh, okay, very nice. And so one aspect here of the Lightning Network is that the channels are publicly advertised. So you tell the entire Lightning Network that Alice and Bob open a channel, right? And that they have, for example, 1 Bitcoin capacity in that channel. And of course, if you publicly advertise something that has some privacy concerns, right? You at least reveal that you have a channel and that the capacity is in there. But Lightning Network the protocol also provides the opportunity of opening private channels. So where exactly is the difference here?
So the difference is that the public channels are known and they're broadcast to everyone on the Lightning Network, and anyone on the Lightning Network can use them to route their payments. But these private channels are not they're not known to everyone, and to route over them, you have to be told them. So the information is part of the invoice when someone makes a payment. So they improve the privacy in respect because those channels are no longer known. So that information can't be overlapped with any other information.
Yeah, very, very nice, right? Okay, and so you also speak a little bit here about rendezvous routing. How would that work?
So the way that works, that's, if people are familiar with Tor, that's the analogy there is like a Tor hidden service. So normally in Lightning, you know if you want to pay someone, they'll tell you a lot of information, including which is their payment channel that they own. And then you make your payment, and it ends up, the final hop is the payment channel that they own. And when the payment happens, they get the money. So rendezvous routing is similar to Tor hidden services in that the person you're paying won't tell you which is their payment channel. They'll tell you about some random payment channel out there on the network called a rendezvous point. And you'll make a payment to that rendezvous point, and the rendezvous point will make a payment to the person you're paying. which means if you're receiving payments, the person who's paying you doesn't know which is your payment channel. And that's really good for privacy because the payment channels are associated with Bitcoin on-chain. So there's a UTXO that has a 2 of 2 multisig and it's on-chain. And it'll be good to hide that if possible. So that's what I'm talking about there, rendezvous routing.
Okay, very, very nice. Chris, we covered many topics already, right? And of course, man, one of the questions that is still left out here is at Breaking Bitcoin. And what will your talk be focused on? What do you want to discuss there?
It will mostly be about privacy because I think there's it will be about the things a lot that I've talked today that I want to get the general kind of developing public really aware of all the privacy research and all this stuff because it's just kind of awareness raising and raising a lot of points that I think could be useful. So hopefully if people develop wallets or develop this kind of thing, then they should know what's a good thing to do with privacy and what's a bad thing. What would be a direction that people should work towards. That's mostly what my talk will be about. And also it will have a lot of, I'm a big fan of kind of using real world examples to make things really concrete. So I'll have a lot of real world examples of like, here's a situation where address reuse like may ruin someone's privacy or where this other thing ruins someone's privacy.
And here you have 35 different explanations or examples of real world, real life examples here. So definitely very good to apply these theories and to see how they actually play out.
Yeah.
Then, of course, another question will be you're one of the many awesome speakers that will be here at this conference. Which other speaker are you excited about?
I don't know. I suppose I'm excited about all of them. They're all very good. They're all very. I've spoken to a lot of them on IRC and in real life, and they're really, people who are at the top of their profession. They know what they're talking about. Like I don't know, Jonas Snelly, Jonas Nick, Greg Sanders. Loads of them. I'm looking forward to watching their talk as well as to giving my talk.
Yes, this will be a great opportunity here to share knowledge and to grow together. So I'm really looking forward to Amsterdam, 8th and 9th of June, 2019. And of course, Chris, the last and most important question will be, do you think that this time we will actually break Bitcoin?
Well, yes, I'm going to say yes.
Oh no, we're all doomed.
Yeah, we're all doomed. Sell it to me. I want to buy it cheaper.
Yes. Okay. Very nice, Chris. Thank you so much here for not just coming onto the World Crypto Network here and sharing your storage and your insight here into these very interesting, very complex topics, but of course also for contributing to Bitcoin and the open source ecosystem. That's not a given. You sacrifice a lot of your time and attention and skill to get this going. And again, thank you so much. You've done a lot of awesome work, and we're very proud to have you on our side here to fight the good fight. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Perfect. So Piers, also thank you for joining us here today at the very interesting conversation with Chris here about all the nuances of privacy in Bitcoin. And of course, if you find this knowledge informational, and if you think it's interesting, then you absolutely must come to Amsterdam. Again, June 8th and 9th, because we will have nonstop these types of conversations. And as US is asking, I will be at Breaking Bitcoin, doing a talk and probably joining a panel or two, and also doing a lot of videos here for the World Crypto Network, continuing to doing them, because I think this is very powerful information that needs to be spread and that needs to be out there. So if you would like to verify that we actually exist in meat space, then you must come to Amsterdam. Otherwise, you'd never know if we actually might be a dog, right? Privacy and anonymity. So maybe we're just dogs with masks. We never know. So Chris, any last words that would like to share with the peers?
No, just thanks for having me. Thanks for doing this, and it should be a great conference in June.
Yes, I very much agree. So Piers, go to the Breaking Bitcoin conference, and of course follow Chris's work here on Twitter and of course on GitHub, Electrum personal server, JoinMarket, the privacy wiki. It's so much good work that you do. So again, Piers, thank you very much for joining us today, and see you on the next show. Bye bye.